It's Friday, the 22nd of October, 2021, and we're sending from Gothenburg because we both have a live audience here and we're streaming. Welcome you all. I'm up here on stage with Torbjörn Lund, who's Professor of Biomathematics and Deputy Vice Chancellor at the University of Gothenburg for Cooperation and Societal Impact.
Thank you.
I'm Maureen McKelvey. I'm Professor of Industrial Management and Economics and also Director of our new center. Our event is called Creative Destruction through Innovation, Entrepreneurship, Creativity, and Science. And this is because society needs to change. But how can we promote such changes and how can we interact? Our opening ceremony is starting a dialogue on these questions, I think should be the best way to think about it, between leaders, entrepreneurs, and researchers across different spheres of society. In this center, our approach is inspired by the economist Joseph A. Schumpeter, who talked a lot about creative destruction. And now that sounds kind of negative in one sense, but what it also means that when we need change and we need transitions, we can move resources between different activities and organizations. It's a type of experimentation and churn where different existing resources can be repurposed and used for new ones. And our foci for the panels will be about how and why individuals and organizations can stimulate such change, and what is the role of innovation, entrepreneurship, creativity, and science in this. Of course, the university in general has these ambitions, and within our area of knowledge-intensive innovation ecosystems, we really have three big goals. One is excellent science. The second is impacting graduate students and studies, such as PhD students and masters, and societal impact and dialogue, which of course is a great reason that you and I are opening this together. So I have 3 points. One is how you represent or participate in these type of knowledge-intensive innovation ecosystems. I can also say that's a really hard combination of words to say, so we've abbreviated to you got KIES. You have the key to open the future. A little bit about why today, and a little bit about what's next. So first of all, for all the participants, we have more than 100 total participating live today. You represent a diversity of different backgrounds, experiences, and goals. We have people from engineering, from medicine, natural sciences, design, business, economics and law, industrial engineering, and many other areas. And we also have, within academia, both new PhD students, in fact, one who's not even hired yet, but she's still participating, and we have postdocs and professors on the panels. And that says something important about academia, which we're always looking to the next generation. We also have people from business and creative spheres that are important in Gothenburg. We have global corporations. We have smaller entrepreneurs that are actually run pretty big businesses in different ways. And we also have a lot of intermediaries or policy linked into incubators and mobility for the future. And I think that's really important because the whole concept of a knowledge-intensive innovation ecosystem suggests that there are different individuals involved. We have different roles, different types of knowledge. We're interacted through, we have different resources, we have different ways of interacting, and we have governance, but what we are united in is our idea of making society better for the future. So the goal of this center is that we will be able to pull together different types of experts, both in the science and in societal impact, in order to, if you wish, make a better society. How will we do it? Well, there's a lot of different ways of doing so, but I would like to remind us that in academia and in science in general, it's very important with highly trained talent, autonomy for individuals involved in research and science to tackle interesting and big problems, exploration of multiple problems and solutions, and of course, societal debate. My view is that research is a conversation. We need to discuss both within academia and with different types of what's called stakeholders, but really it means people, such as everyone present, about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how it matters for society. What next? Well, the first what's next is actually to turn over to Torbjörn.
Thank you, Maureen. I'm really glad to be invited here to open this exciting center event. And as I was mentioning before, I just started my new role as a Vice Deputy in Collaboration and Societal Impact. That can be translated to different words in Swedish, but I like that even better in English. So I also have another interest in this because on the very first day, the 17th of August, when I got into the office, I had a long list of two pages of all the things I had to take care of. And one of the most exciting and probably one of the most challenging is one to look over and try to make the whole ecosystem more efficient for innovators within the university. How can we be more helpful in another way? And I have thought quite a bit about that, and I'm very eager to learn from people that have actually been doing research, like Guido here, and a lot of other people are very active here in that field. So we can learn not only from our own experiences, but also from people actually working with this in a scientific manner. So that is the great advantage of being part of a complete universe, or university, a universe. And as mentioned before, there are a lot of many friends here that I know from different roles, and one of my previous interests was since I'm a mathematician, you mentioned that also interested in biological questions. At some point I got a question from a vascular surgeon, and he had some questions about some flow, and I tried to talk about that. And not, as you mentioned, research should be a dialogue, and not only one-way communication, as usually there are between, if you are a consultant and taking problems. But dialogues could be really painful, but it could also be very constructive, and you need to take steps forward from both sides to make an effort to meet in between somewhere. And going back and forth, remodeling that question into something else, as the usual standard is, then we could go forward, and it turned out to be an invention. And another question then raised, and a third, etc. So I've been working a lot with the vascular surgeons since then, and that took me to Stanford, to the hospital there, working inside the hospital. And there I also got into another ecosystem, quite efficient, quite large and famous. And there are some things where we could try to pick up from there as well. And I see Arthur is here, and that was 19. It was 2015 in early November, where I met a familiar face, Paul Gatenholm. He was sitting there in the cafe, and we were, "Oh, that's you, Paul." And then we were chatting a bit and drinking coffee. And he said, "Oh, you have to come to my course and give a guest lecture." And I did about the mathematical model, because he had his new ideas of working with printing biological matters, and they had a new startup, he said, called BioInk, with Clementina at that point. So it's I mean, we are quite a big family here in Gothenburg, even meeting outside, and we should keep together to be able to be visible not only around here to Hisingen, but also to Stockholm and maybe to Brussels as well. So I think that's a really important thing, and this is an important step that you take here, and I'm really eager to learn much more about that, and hopefully we can implement something in reality as well. And I'm looking at Clementina especially. We have a button to talk about as well. Yeah, keep on that discussion. So thank you very much, and I'm really happy to be part of this opening.
Thank you, Torbjörn. And I think it was a great example from your own background, how one needs to work with different problems, they find new solutions, different areas interact. And that is, of course, a lot of what our research is about, how this works, how is societal impact, how is academic engagement happening. But that's really the end for us, because now I'd like to invite Magnus Aronsson from Esprit. And Magnus will be the moderator for our two panels, which explore these innovation ecosystems in terms of large global companies and entrepreneurial firms. Because as you said, we're in Gothenburg, but we're Gothenburg part of the world. This is a very international environment in many ways. Magnus is truly in his own right, a leading entrepreneur in research communication about innovation and entrepreneurship in Sweden. And so he's really the perfect person to moderate. He's also experienced, so he's already set up and ready here. So I guess it's time for us to get off the stage.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Maureen and Torbjörn, for that starting point of this event. And it's very nice and somewhat scary. At the same time, I'm very excited being here, given what we've all been through over the last 18, 19 months, to be together, but also standing on the stage live with a live audience. It's something that has been not as much for the last time. And to be part of this opening ceremony of the Gothenburg Centre of Knowledge Intensive Innovation Ecosystem, and this inaugural event with the theme Creative Destruction Through Innovation, Entrepreneurship and Science is truly an honor. And I'm really looking forward for the next 55 minutes that I'm going to moderate, where we'll have two panels, followed by a few concluding remarks. And you can guess the program is very tight, and my main job here today is to guide us and make certain that we end on time. As you all know that are entrepreneurs, one of the most important things as an entrepreneur is to be selling. And I just want to add a few words what Maureen mentioned about Esbjerg, what we're doing. We are a national organization here in Sweden working with making certain that we try to make as much of the research as done from Luleå Technical University in the north to Malmö University in the south, Gothenburg and Chalmers here on the west, and Stockholm University and Stockholm School of Economics and all the institutions in Stockholm and everything in between, to make as much of the research in our field accessible for a broader audience. So we are like in science journalism, so to speak, and also welcome everybody that's following us online. And with that, a few housekeeping activities. If, God forbidden, something will happen, a fire somewhere in the house, you need to exit those doors there or the two doors there. That's very important to say. And I will not do any long introductions of the panelists, given that we have such short time here together. So if you get very interested to learn more about people, talk to them afterwards or use internet. When we're finished, I will repeat that because repetition is the sort of mother of learning. When we end for the lunch, in an orderly fashion, depart through that door, make a left, and then a left, and you enter into the room behind here where the lunch will be served, and then we'll eat it out here. So that's some of the logistics. So, without further ado, let us get started with the first panel. And the theme for this panel is Knowledge Intensive Innovation Ecosystem. You will hear that innovative ecosystem, we will sort of really, if you don't learn anything other today, you will know what that is. Large companies' perspectives. And we have 4 great panelists, and as I introduce them, I would like them to join me here on stage. And to begin with, we have Guido Bunsdorf. He's a professor in economics at the University of Kassel in Germany. He's also previously a visiting professor here through the visiting professor program at the Gothenburg School of Economics, Business and Law. And is also a member of the KIES. That's the one I'm going to use from now on because that's on the steering committee. We also have Stefan Kristerin from Volvo Cars, where he's the Director of External Research and the Chairperson of the Strategic Knowledge and Research Committee there. He's a member of KIES Societal Advisory Council. You see a theme coming up here. Then we have Nathalie Lazarik. She's a professor in economics. And pardon my French, it will be in English French, Université Côte d'Azur Sophia Antipolis in France. And she's also a member of the, been a visiting professor program here and a member of the steering committee for KIES. And last but not least, we have Anna Sandström from AstraZeneca, where she's the Director for Science Policy and Relations for Europe and a member of KIES Societal Advisory Council. So, welcome up, and we'll get going. Check time. Here in Sweden, we have relative the size of our economy, we have many large multinational companies. Not at least here in the Gothenburg region. We have several of the world-leading multinationals and world-leading industry companies in Sweden. But also in recent years, we have had a number of tech startups that have received a lot of attention, not at least from policymakers and media. But given this, we're going to start, the format will be, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions now, and I'll give you the impossible task to answer those 2 questions with no more than 3 minutes each. So we get an introduction, and it'll be a bit more comprehensive than just short questions and questions and short answers. Okay. Are large multinational companies important to the future of the Gothenburg region, and by that also for Sweden? And if yes, why are they important? And the question also, the follow-up question that is, in what ways do global and national links between large companies and knowledge-intensive innovation and entrepreneurship stimulate creative destruction and/or sustainability? So given the power I have as a moderator, I want our 2 panelists from the industry to start. And who wants to go first?
Ladies first.
Yes.
I saw your gesture. Of course, one of the things that we can contribute is being one of the engines of the ecosystem in this region to spur innovation and growth. So that's one of the roles we can have together with all the others, because what is imperative in order to spur innovation and growth is the collaborative climate and having the right stakeholders to be able to collaborate with. And even though, we are recruiting like crazy at the moment at AstraZeneca in Gothenburg, we still know that no matter how good we are at recruiting, most of the creative minds in the world are somewhere else. So we also need to link up to academia, to healthcare, etc. And together we can then, what we can contribute the challenging research questions, we can contribute research infrastructure. It was really good news. It was the new instrument that we have set up together with Gothenburg University was inaugurated just this week, DNP NMR. That's the type of initiatives we can do together in this region. And of course the BioVenture Hub, etc. So infrastructure for collaborating, for R&D, for research. And of course the competence we have with our employees and having them involved in collaborations with the external world, of course. And we have 2,600 employees at AstraZeneca in Gothenburg, and you know that many of them have PhDs and are professors. So we really see that we have a lot to contribute, and also being part of building the ecosystem with our commitment to GoCo Health Innovation City, with the BioVenture Hub. We really try to be an active stakeholder in this community.
Thank you. Steph.
If I may continue. The same is true for us, basically, at Göteborgs. We are active around the globe. We have offices in Sunnyvale, in San Francisco. We are active outside Shanghai and so on. But Gothenburg is our home. We have 8,000 R&D people in Gothenburg. Of course, Gothenburg is extremely important to us. And one of our sayings, most important sayings in R&D is lead, speed, and flow. Lead, if we just stop there, is important. But speed and flow are keys. To win something the day after the competition has ended is kind of useless. Sometimes we forget about that. Speed is extremely important. It's becoming more and more important all the time. Also, when it comes to ecosystems, just a short, something very short about that. There are 2, if you ask maybe Torbjörn here about the ecosystems, you differentiate between the complex simple systems and complex rich systems. And even if we are part of a very complex system, it's simple from a perspective that there are single points of failure in it. The ship crisis right now is one of them. which means that we need to collaborate more. We need to expand. We need to become more robust, and we do that through collaboration. We are very, very active in Lindholmen and around Norra Älvstranden, north of the river here. We are very active in collaboration with SPL here and Chalmers and other players. And of course, sometimes we also have our own open innovationary and garage activities on, just like anyone else being big. But we also initiate change. The revolution of mobility, more than 100 years ago, initiated the event of the modern car, took place when we already had roads, already had Rockefeller oil. All that was in place. Now, we introduce the electrical car, we introduce the connected, collaborative, automated car, and there's a lot of things not in place. So instead of being a result of a new ecosystem, we drive a new ecosystem, which means that we also drive a new type of collaboration. So we are directly collaborating with the city of Gothenburg, different authorities. So there's a new business space growing and evolving around private-public partnership. And I'm guessing I'm running out of time now. So,
Great. Well, thank you. Let's go over to you, Natalie.
Yes. First to say that I think, of course, we know large companies and university are really key actors of a knowledge-intensive ecosystems, and key actor is also key player. And we may ask the question, which kind of play and which kind of rule of the games will be implemented? And of course, large companies have huge also responsibility in this kind of play to be implemented. And I think perhaps large company can also play a major roles in order to distill new value, to imprint new value toward, let's say, inclusiveness, sustainability, and to implement this value within the ecosystems, and also to diffuse these social norms. So I think it's a first important roles. And second, also, I think it's also large companies have also a key role to structure the ecosystems. And by the structuration, I mean to provide additional opportunities towards startups, PhD students, scientific collaboration, and to structure with this kind of collaborations. And also, and it's important to say, to create a fair leaderships within a clear direction in mind toward this ecosystem, and to select key priority. For instance, it can be sustainability, inclusiveness, gender issue. It can be also important. And last point, I think it's in order to provide this clear direction, it's important also to provide a fair trade-off between global and local chain values with a geopolitical agenda in mind and lesson learned from the COVID crisis. And I think it's important also for me, according to me, and this will be the last point, to really rethink about how to implement also a local chain value as a possible agenda for Gothenburg regions.
Well, thank you. Guido.
Well, a lot has been said, and I don't want to repeat everything, but I would agree to everything you said. Large companies are to innovative ecosystems a bit like anchor tenants are to a shopping mall. So in a shopping mall, you have a large department store typically that draws customers to the mall, and that creates a lot of positive spillovers for the other tenants in that mall. And in a similar way, an innovative ecosystem requires these large companies, particularly globally active innovative companies, to be around. Because a lot of things could not be done without the sheer size of the large company. So size matters here. So I think the most important thing that a global a globally active, innovative, large company can do for an innovative ecosystem is to thrive and to be successful and to keep innovating and to keep pioneering new markets like you do, because I think that is also something that we see time and again in the literature. It's the large diversifying firm that pioneers a new market, and it's not always the startup as Silicon Valley myth would have it. Maybe a bit more specifically, I think one important aspect of why large companies are important, and I think that's also visible here in Gothenburg, is labor mobility. So your presence attracts talent to the region that otherwise wouldn't be here. And if you're not Swedish, but if you spend a bit of time in this region, you see the difference. You see how international this is, and that I don't think. Sorry for all the university representatives. I don't think we as university can claim that this is because of us. This is because of the globally active companies. Labor, you attract talent, you train talent, and that talent can also be extremely important for other players. That talent is a major source of entrepreneurial activities. You can train entrepreneurs much better than we do. We try to do our best as universities, but a lot of the knowledge that they need, both as entrepreneurs or as innovative employees that move on to other firms, is also what is trained at the large companies.
Great, thank you. I want to touch upon another question. As you can understand, we could be talking for hours on these topics, so we're going to just sort of touch upon many different things here to give. But I want to come back to one of the goals that Maureen mentioned in her introduction before you got KIES, is that the center will be engaged with many different stakeholders in the surrounding society and ecosystem around these topics, particularly to reach outside of the university. So to send some recommendations before we open up for some more dialogue here. How would you recommend the center and the larger scope, even for the university and scientists, to work together with industry and achieve even more relevant and societal innovations? Do you want to start? We can go the same order. Anna?
Yeah, just a comment on what was said previous, a very short comment. Okay. First of all, I can just agree with everything that was said. And one thing that I mean, the recruitment, we are recruiting about 50% from outside Sweden. So truly international environment. And also what I liked, I think all three of you also mentioned this being a change agent. I mean, throughout this pandemic, we have seen a step-by-step learning process. And at the same time, we've seen science in real time, science being implemented in real time. And being part of such journeys can only be made if there is a trustful collaborative climate across stakeholders. Then when there are boundaries, we run into problems. But when the pathways are clear, when we have established trust, we have collaboration, we can achieve so much together. And that's one of the things that I think we actually saw in the Gothenburg region, but we also saw it across the globe, good examples of that. And that's actually one recommendation, looking into how can a center like you got KIES study these type of changes, how ecosystems are evolving, how the ecosystems can be part of becoming a change agent. I mean, one of the examples that we have now, you mentioned, I don't remember who mentioned, we turn breakthrough science into new therapies. And one of the things that we have initiated recently is going into a new modality, oligonucleotide therapies. As one example, say that many times quickly, try. And in order to sort of get the community together across Sweden, we launched an initiative called Oligonova to get stakeholders together in academia, industry, and healthcare. And now a hub is being established at AstraZeneca, but it will be completely independent from AstraZeneca, supporting academic projects progress further towards bringing new therapies to patients. And those type of change processes, I think, are really important to study. How can they become fruitful? What are drivers? What are barriers? And how can society sort of incentivize those type of processes?
Okay, Stefan?
Thank you very much. I would really like to, this can't be emphasized enough. Knowledge and the young people bearing it is extremely important to us. There is nothing more important, really. And there's a shortage of it. A very, very clear shortage. Across the line, basically. So you said it so well, so I'm going to go on. Then, of course, when it comes to interaction, we also think that excellence, I'm a scientist myself, so excellence comes first. Secondly comes capabilities, being able to turn it into something useful. But then after that comes industrialization and scale, to be able to scale it up. Going from excellence to scale means being able to go outside your own comfort zone, to go cross. Cross knowledge is extremely important, and here comes something maybe a bit difficult to do within the traditional university. You need to, within the same framework, the same number of years, add more without taking anything out. I'm sorry, but that won't go. That won't fly. We're talking about Champions League or at least La Liga, nothing less, which means that they still have to be experts, but also knowledgeable in other stuff as well. And this is a transition. It's happening everywhere. It's happening internationally. And when it comes to new ecosystems, you have, like in our case, we took for us, really big decision to go to Google and say, well, you did infotainment much better than us. Could we please put it in our car? Simplifying a very big discussion, but still. So you find the Google Android in the car. That's an ecosystem for new entrepreneurs, new apps and all that. But then you also have very, very complex ecosystems like connecting forecast and AI for green energy, when will it blow, so on, all the way down to how should you design the chemistry in the battery and connecting that chain. That's a very complex and high-tech ecosystem. So we're having both at the same time. And in both, you need both the specialist knowledge and the cross-cutting knowledge. And that goes for students, PhD students, researchers. So, okay. Small task.
Yeah. Yeah. Good luck. No, I'm just kidding. Natalie.
So I have 6 points of recommendation. If let me resume them very briefly. First, create a space of discussion to co-design and structure the ecosystem with shared workshop, regular meeting to increase trust. This is an important point. To select some shared priority in terms of training and grand challenge. It can be sustainability, blue economy, with also local policymaker. Third point, I think it's important to create experimental space. I think it's super important for testing new ideas and creating new gateways, for instance, hiring PhD and by this way, creating additional opportunity. I think it's this is super important. Implement also attractive and vibrant space for innovation and creativity to think about next grand challenge and how we can solve them in a pragmatic way. And a fourth recommendation will be to evaluate it also force and weakness and missing links, possible missing links within the local ecosystem and create a shared agenda in these directions. And last point, I think it's really important, and we are here also there, to promote a culture of entrepreneurships and to solve a concrete and local problem with robust actions. It can be in social innovation, mobility, blue economy, and so on. But it can be in reducing inequality, gender issue. There are huge problems that can be, and that we can solve locally and pragmatically. And by also solving local problems, we can be able to have a visible action and visible impact, social impact on the local ecosystem with visible result. So that will be my clear recommendation.
Thank you. Guido.
I'll keep it brief. There's abundant evidence that researchers of all career stages who engage with society, who engage with industry, tend to be the better researchers. And it's extremely hard to identify a causal effect here, but as best we can tell, this is the effect of having engaged with agents outside the university. These researchers ask the better questions and they find the better answers. So there's a huge potential, and I think this room shows that this potential is really made use of in Gothenburg, and this is something that I think the center can further add to and should further add to. The one recommendation that I would add to the list of recommendations is that it is extremely important, in my view, to bring the junior researchers on both sides into this discussion. We have a lot of doctoral students here, which is great, but we should also have the junior industrial researchers as part of this debate, because I think the sooner we expose the individuals in both environments to one another, the more they can benefit, and the more society can benefit from that, because they'll be around for quite a while and they still have a lot to contribute.
Thank you. I'm trying so many things to pick up on, but we have time for a little bit of a follow-up question. I have to choose something, and the two things that I want you to quickly reflect upon. This, if you can give some example, you talked about, Stefan, sort of the need for so much more speed and flow, particularly the speed part. If we can have some examples there, and also the challenge of new types of collaboration, because we have a lot of inertia in these systems, particularly, I would say, in academia, quite traditional in many ways. So how do we change that? How do we really make certain that we can sort of speed up the speed in these collaborations, at the same time as one sometimes to create this trust you all were talking about? That usually takes a little bit of time. So you have like a contradiction there.
Yes.
Potential contradiction.
Yes, I understand that. And now, just like AstraZeneca, we have some 300 plus PhDs in our organization. I think we do, generally speaking, know how to speak to universities. But the speed aspect, typically back in the days when we had a problem, typically technical problem back then, was, let's start a PhD student project on that. We get the answer in 6 years. Now we need some kind of answer. We understand we won't get the full answer, but at least a partial answer in 6 months' time. We still want the PhD. But we have to rig it in such a way that you have a part that delivers along the way. And that's a challenge both for universities and the PhD school itself and the industry, of course. So that's an example of the speed issue.
Okay. Good example.
Yeah, okay. And I see your fingers.
We have to...
Very, very briefly, just adding, I mean, the collaborations need to be built on mutual benefits and also mutual respect for each other's roles. I mean, PhD students need to publish, they need to launch their academic career, etc. So those conversations about that we have the same expectations from a collaboration is imperative. Otherwise, you run into problems later on, always. So you have to iron out what are the milestones, what are the expectations, how shall we deal with publishing, etc. And that's, otherwise you will not have those fruitful conversations, and those conversations need to be built on understanding of each other's roles and drivers.
And just adding you short to that, I mean, that's a matter of creating a comfort zone. Put those bullet points up on the wall, everyone can read them, make them and transparent and known, which means people will feel comfort in that collaboration, and do that at the beginning, not once the lawyers get involved, because then it's too late.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that's
I know
advice.
that you educate a lot of lawyers.
So to round up, Natalie and Guido, some final remarks from you, because unfortunately we have to wrap up.
Yes, I think what Astrid said is super important. We should have a perfect, not a perfect, but a fluid understanding of mutual expectations. We have not the same agenda. We, as a researcher, we and a PhD, and especially junior researchers, should publish and should have visible outcome of their collaboration. But also we have also some junior and researcher are also looking for solving concrete problems, and sometimes it's really good to be inside the black box and to really solve concrete problem, because it's we are not only thinking about theoretical background and so on. We would like to have a role in the society, and collaborative partnership with large company are unique opportunity when there is trust and respect between partners. And I think it's an important precondition for this, and if some prerequisites are there are huge opportunity for doing this when the frame is well settled and implemented at the beginning. Otherwise, it creates distortions of possible outcomes. So I think it's an important prerequisite.
Okay, and Guido.
I would say in the end it still hinges on individuals, and there are two things that I think are really important are individuals that have experience on both sides and recent experience, so allowing for mobility across sectors at more experienced stages of one's career is really important. And I think, again, just from what I learned about your biographies, you're exactly these kinds of persons that have the experience on both sides. And in academia, I think we often lack the kind of experience on the other side, quote unquote. And similarly important, hybrid roles, dual appointments, industrial PhDs, individuals who by their own job description have to wear both hats at the same time. So I think that it can really be helpful.
Well, thank you very much for very insightful thoughts about this, and I'm not even trying to summarize it or even conclude, but one of the things we bring is it's a fairly big toolbox to use, and there's a lot of things you can do to collaborate. And then I picked up what you said. Well, to create this trust, you might have to start a bit slow and then to speed up, because I say to think first, have these meetings to manage the expectations to begin with, and then you can move on with much faster and with better results. So thank you very much for these insights, and let's give them a hand. So we're jumping right into the next panel, and the theme for that panel is knowledge-intensive innovation ecosystems, entrepreneurship, to keep it short. Also in this panel we have 4 panelists. There is one change though from the announced program. Unfortunately, well, it's also good news for him and the company. Eric Gottenholm, the CEO and co-founder of Cellink and BICO, and also an alumni of the master's program in innovation and industrial management here at the Gothenburg School of Business, Economics and Law, had to be in Stockholm today. A few days ago, the Swedish government announced the finalists of the Swedish government's Export Success of the Year 2020 award, and BICO was one of the companies, one of the 3 finalists there. So as we are having this event, Eric is up there and hopefully the winner, and with the Minister of Trade Anna Hallberg and Prince Daniel as giving up the award in Stockholm. So But, not really but, excellent in his place, we are very happy to have Arthur Ira joining us, and currently he's the business area manager for bioprinting at BICO. Before taking that position, he was on the board for Cellink and has a very long career in the life science industry, where he's had many, many leading roles in a number of companies and been sort of instrumental in their success. So please come up as I introduce you. We also have Jose Gonzalez. He's a musician and songwriter, and by that also an entrepreneur in the creative industry. And to make a plug here, recently his third album with the title Local Valley was released, and he's also a member of the KIES Societal Advisory Council. And we have Astrid Heidemann Lassen, an associate professor in operations and innovation management at Aalborg University in Denmark. Also a previous visiting professor here in the visiting professor program, and she's a member of the KIES steering committee. And finally, Rögnvaldur Samuelsson, he's a professor in industrial engineering at the University of Iceland, and he's a researcher also here at Gothenburg University, and a member of the steering committee of KIES. So in this case then, we're going to have a kind of the same discussion as we had with the previous one, the same setup. So in your role as sort of entrepreneurs and change leaders, start with Arthur and Jose, what motivates you in your role as an entrepreneur and change leader in your respective organizations, and what are you doing to change society, and what kind of specialized knowledge are important in that role?
Okay. So thank you for inviting me, first of all. So BICO is the first bioconvergence company in the world. By combining biology with genomics, proteomics, artificial intelligence, and many other technologies, we are developing the future of medicine, the future of health. And of course, this is something that it's very attractive because we have a higher purpose. We are making substantial changes in how medicine is perceived and how the health is also perceived. So, of course, this is the main driver for me and my colleagues at BICO. We have today 15 companies in the group. So from a very startup for 5 years ago, today is a company of 30 billion Swedish krona. So it's one of the most successful companies, I would say, in the world in life science. And we have 3 divisions. So we have the bioprinting, the bioscience, and the bioautomation. And we need a wide range of specialized people, not only in bioscience, but also bioengineers, mechanical engineers, bioinformatics, mathematics, to do the algorithms, etc. And of course also faculties within the medicine like microbiology or diagnostics. I will say a great example of creative destruction in bioconvergence is addressing the challenges from new angles and perspectives, and also combining technologies. I will say a bit as a Tesla has been for the automotive industry, so we are doing the same for the life science industry. So, I mean, not only where the answers of the actual problem are only coming from the field where you are working, but also from other perspectives, like combining artificial intelligence, but also using interfaces you heard before, like Google or Apple, but also battery technology and many other technologies.
Jose?
Yeah. The way I'm thinking about myself in this forum is I'll try to explain how I think about my role as an artist and the way I write music and perform it live throughout the world. And basically, I'm a concerned world citizen. And since my second album, I sort of searched for topics to write about that weren't only about me or about relationships. And since then, I've been sort of navigating and looking at the World Value Survey, for example, and see what types of ideas are around the world and what ideas might be problematic going forward. So I think about human-to-human value alignment as something that might be interesting and important now that people are talking about human and AI value alignment. If we can't get human-to-human alignment first, I think we're screwed. So that's one of the issues I like to think about, and so I see it slightly as music as being part of arts in general, and one of the roles that art has, except for making people dance and hang out and have fun, can also be to debug our mimetic machines, our brains. And so I'm interested in how I can write songs that have that ability to make people think and maybe evaluate their beliefs. Not all songs, but one song from the new album is called Visions, and it's about envisioning our common future. And I was thinking about John Lennon's Imagine, but understanding that there are parts of his lyrics that not everyone subscribes to. So Jonathan Haidt, the social psychologist, he pointed this out in one of his books, where imagine there's no heaven. Of course, not everyone subscribes or wants to imagine that. Imagine no possessions. That's another one that might divide people into groups. So yeah, I wrote the song called Visions in that vein, try to figure out commonalities and aspirations. Yeah. I can just mention that much of my thinking comes from effective altruism movement, which is a movement where we try to figure out the biggest problems in the world, but then also figure out if they're neglected or not, and then how tractable are these problems. In a way to guide yourself to see where you can make the most change for the better with your resources. Yeah.
I'll come back to a question that we'll never read because something popped up in mind. Yes, Astrid.
Yes, well, as a researcher and a teacher, obviously what motivates me is how scientific knowledge impacts the young minds we're working with our students and our PhD students, and how they go on to shaping the future, both in terms of becoming entrepreneurs themselves, but also becoming corporate entrepreneurs in the setting of larger companies. And I think this is pretty straightforward. When you ask a university scientist what motivates, what types of knowledge, this is the answer you get. But if we also think about our roles as scientists, it's obvious to also start thinking about this topic of what is the role of science in an ecosystem, and what are the types of knowledge that we can impact. And here I think it is very inspirational and motivational to think about what are the types of problems that we're actually trying to solve in society. We're facing a number of grand societal challenges. The SDGs are one way of looking at it. We can look at it from a number of different points of view. But all we know about these societal challenges is that they are so grand that they are what I think Riddle and Buchanan, that type of research, they called wicked problems. A wicked problem is so difficult to answer that it will never have a straightforward answer. I think this parallels a lot of what we see in ecosystems, both from an entrepreneurial point of view and the point of view of larger companies. Ecosystems are ever dynamic and have multiple stakeholders that have to collaborate in a dynamic way. And if we think about these wicked problems and how we as scientists can contribute to solving wicked problems, we should also think about not only how we create excellent research, but also how we create excellent relevant research. And I think this is where it really mirrors what was mentioned by the panel previously, that relevance in research comes from also knowing what is relevant for companies, knowing what is relevant in society, not just from a research point of view, but also from a ecosystem or business point of view. So the collaboration in that sense, I think, is very, very motivational, and the type of knowledge that is necessary to have as a researcher.
Arnaldur.
Yeah. When I think about, you mentioned entrepreneurship, motivation, and specialized knowledge, I think, research has shown us that there are a number of motives for starting a company. And changing the world can have different meanings for different people. I mean, you would be changing often it's personal motives, change your world, your personal situation. You want to change where you are and where you're heading. So I think that's very, very, very important to realize. And in terms of specialized knowledge, for me, entrepreneurship, being science-based or culture-based, is very much a team activity. So in terms of specialized knowledge, you need a lot of specialized knowledge, of course, and depend on where you are or where you're going, what type of opportunities, this kind of a problem solution fit that is often what becomes the main activity of entrepreneurs early on and continues. But there's also entrepreneurship, as I see it, is in a way a specialized knowledge in some sense. Because I see entrepreneurship is like a tool. It's a method, you could argue, for change, and it has specific, specific nature, if you like. And especially, if you're going to change things, the uncertainty. How do you deal with uncertainty? So you could say it's a method for mobilizing and mobilizing resources under big uncertainty. And entrepreneurship tends to be not the thing you expect it to be, usually. Because you start in one place, but then there are new problems. The problems you thought were important weren't that so important because there are others that were more important, or the solution didn't work out, but other you had to find. So there's a kind of this continuous process. And to me, that's a bit like a specialized knowledge. And where do you get that knowledge from? Well, I think that's a tricky question. Is it in universities? Is it in industry? Can we collaborate on creating that knowledge? I think that's sort of the task in front of us, I think.
Thank you. If I start with you, Arthur, we'll begin. So what do you see with, if you would give some recommendations for the collaboration between particularly the new center, you got KIES, the university, and for instance, your company or companies that you're involved with, what would be most important?
I think we need to have forums where we can have this kind of discussions. I think we need to adapt the educational system to the new reality. It has to start much earlier. So I think things are happening so rapidly. So that's important that we have also convergence with what the demands are from the industry. We see, for example, that we have a lack of skills, lack of competences. So that's why we have to attract people from other countries. And this is also a problem for us to continue growing in Sweden, actually. And that's also the reason why we are growing much rapidly in other areas, in other regions, for example, in the US. So I think the competences is a very key issue. And also to have adapted skills also to the new reality. And as also somebody else mentioned before, we need the speed. So we need to speed up. But I think creating these forums are extremely important, where we can really find concretely what we are looking for. So I think that will be very important. And I will also like to add that in the Nordics, we have the very good prerequisites to lead, for example, in the life science industry. To take the lead in the life science industry. And we have fantastic examples, big companies and smaller companies. And we can create this together. But I think it's very important, actually, that we listen to the needs from the industry.
Okay, thank you. Jose, I was thinking when you were talking about your mission through your music, do you see your music at being sort of a part of the creative destruction of making people think differently through your...
Yeah, and I also feel like Maureen mentioned that it sounds negative, but if you turn it around, that as society changes, as we have innovation, technological innovation, things change, and then you look back and oh, we actually made things obsolete. That so it's yeah, I'm just figuring out in my mind how to think about this creative destruction. But yeah, I see it as like a side project from my artistry, where the main thing is to write music that people like, and then go out and play, and people enjoy themselves, and you're part of a society where you're helping people to fall asleep or just being calm, and in that way I'm adding to society. But on the other hand, since a couple of years ago, I listened to these frameworks for thinking effective altruism, eco-modernism, and secular humanism, and I took that to the meme sphere, and so I think about the social sustainability, and yeah, so I use that as a sidetrack in a way. Twitter as a armchair activist.
Okay.
but through articles and trying to be informative.
Okay. Now I was thinking that the idea that sort of through art, music, you try to sort of, as you say, you're debugging or sort of change people's perception of things to think about and on a different level on these issues.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to, yeah. So in my case, there are a couple of things I promote, and one, science and reason are the main sort of keywords that I'm trying to promote as a side project from my artistry. And I guess that is some sort of destruction of obsolete and ineffective or negative ideas.
Do you see in your role there something that it could be sort of this collaboration between the university, the center, and the world outside? Where does art?
Yeah, so in many cases, I end up being some sort of middleman in a way. That, so I look at our world in data. They gather statistics from all kinds of things and make comprehensive, short summaries and beautiful graphics. And that's usually what I like retweeting. So yeah.
So Astrid, what recommendations? I mean, you were in the midst of but you gave some in your introduction about deal with wicked problems, so forth, and relevant research. What can be done more in collaboration to solve that? And who determines what's relevant in the research?
Oh, that's a tricky question, but let me start with the first one, yes. So you're asking about reflections on how to work together, and I'm almost tempted to say the most simple answer is work together. But let me just elaborate a little bit on that, because I think if we accept or take for granted that yes, we are dealing with situations that call for ecosystemic solutions, we can call them wicked problems, and they also call for what Maureen outlined, inspired by Schumpeter's thinking, is creative destruction. I think then the type of working together, the type of collaboration that is called for, which is needed, has to have a much more experimental nature in order to really be able to create solutions that will fit these wicked problems in the future. And I think this is also a recommendation that we will be discussing in the KIES, how to work in a more experimental manner that will allow for much more dynamic integration of knowledge as it arises. And I know that this is a working style that is very familiar for entrepreneurs, where you pivot when a new idea arises. And I'm very excited to have your inputs here as a representative of the creative industries, where I think this very dynamic organization of resources in how can we put it, non-monetary way is very inspirational, actually.
And I was just looking at the time. You have to round up, Ragnvalder.
Right. Yeah, I keep to the simple heuristics. Okay, so work together, that's for sure. It's people stupid, so those type of things. I mean, they seem to always be true, you know. Even if we, of course, you know, like to research on complex issues. And I think also one important point to remember when you talk about collaboration between university and industry or entrepreneurs, you know, we are in there for the long run. So it's not like, you know, creating a mission and then it's done and then we can go back to our things, you know, what we have done. But it's a long-term process, you know. We won't solve the problem in one go. There will be new problems, new opportunities, changes. And I think so that's, I think, very important to remember. And I think also what is interesting for us from now I'm talking from as an academic, is to understand how people, you know, are changing in the way they work to change. I think entrepreneurship research realized that change is not only brought about by new ventures. It's about individuals who are using new vehicles for change, you know, like we've heard here Jose was talking about. So, and he's a good representative of, you know, taking on new platforms for changing or inspire change. So, and that is mobilizing resources to bring up, you know, get somewhere to a new world that we haven't really envisioned maybe. But some people have a glimpse of the vision and they're actually moving there. And for us to understand that, how that's being done, and inspire our students to actually be aware of that, and they can actually be a active participant in this. I think that's sort of important for us.
So it's in a way where we solve one problem, we create another problem that we need to solve. Some more research.
Or create new opportunities.
Create new opportunities.
Let's not talk about problems all the time.
Well, well, sometimes you need to do that.
Yes.
You use opportunities to solve the problems, right?
Yes, but we would always like the world to be interesting.
Yeah.
And fun
and
to live in.
Yeah. And changing. Yeah. So, well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we have to sort of round up here and end this panel also. We could have gone on for many, many, many more minutes. So thank you very much, and let's give them a hand.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're sort of reaching the final destination of the journey of this event, and as you got a lot of food for thought around different topics, so we touch upon many, many different things. So I encourage all of you to reflect upon that and think about how you can use some of these ideas that have been brought up here from the two panels in your work and research. And to end this, which is the end of the start of the center, I want to ask to come up Ole Saring, who's the head of department here of the Economy and Society, and Per Kramer, the dean for the Gothenburg School here.
I shall be very brief. I would just like to say that I represent the hosting unit at the university. We host the new center, and we were very proud and we were delighted to learn this spring that the Vice Chancellor decided to start the center and put it into our department. It fits very well with our mission, which is teaching young people, doing research and reaching out to society, and it will strengthen us. And we are sure that it will be very successful under the directorship of Professor Maureen McKelvey. And I have Per Kramer here at my side. He's the dean, and I turn to him. I think you have some remarks for the audience.
Thank you very much, Olof. And dear colleagues, dear friends, dear Maureen, we have gathered here for a good reason, to celebrate the inauguration of a new multidisciplinary research center with a very long acronym, UGOTKIES. You got KIES. Now, the establishment of the center, that is an accomplishment in itself. But as Dean of the School of Business Economics and Law, I would like to underline the process that has brought us here. And this is a result of a successive development of a strong research environment within the field of innovation and entrepreneurship at the School of Business Economics and Law. This has been a development in close cooperation with corporate partners, which was made also possible by this cooperation with the economic support from a number of brave financiers like the Volvo Group, Carl Bennet AB, SKF, the Sten A. Olsson Foundation for Science and Culture. Now, this increasingly strong research environment constituted a precondition also for the development of 2 high-quality postgraduate Master of Science programs at the school. The IM program in Industrial Management and the Knowledge-Based Entrepreneurship program. And thereby, we fulfilled the academic ideal of a close relationship between research and education within this field. It was mentioned before here that one of the alumni of one of these programs is now in Stockholm and hopefully receives a prestigious prize there. And he did. Now, the success of this development was then confirmed by that Maureen successfully applied for being a part of the Swedish Research Council Distinguished Professor Program. And this was a success which was quite unique. It's a rare honor for a social scientist to receive that kind of professorship. And that included a 10-year financing frame, which made it possible for us to further develop this field of action, this research environment. And against that backdrop, we must perceive the KIES Centre as a further stepping stone in a continuous development. This is in a field of rapid transformation. Challenge-driven research must have, or in a field of rapid transformation of challenge-driven research, we as a school must have well-calibrated antennas in order to understand the contemporary societal demands for knowledge and competence. And I would say it is the responsibility of the academy to answer to these demands. If it does not, the academy will become irrelevant. And this is certainly true for the field of applied social sciences. And the field of applied social sciences, that is our business at the School of Business Economics and Law, primarily. Thus, this means that challenge-driven research, if it should function, requires well-developed connections with practice, both for formulating research questions, but also the dissemination of results. Moreover, multidisciplinary approaches for gaining a deeper understanding of complex social processes, such as innovation and entrepreneurship, are absolutely necessary. And here we have KIES. KIES is designed to be a multidisciplinary arena for close interaction between the academy and the surrounding society, with a clear objective to develop knowledge on the international forefront and to make an impact to the benefit of societal development. And the insightful panels we have listened to here promises very much for the future deliberations within the framework of this center. So, just to finish up, for me, in my role as Dean, This is a moment of pride, and I wish the center all the best for its future development. But the center is just a stepping stone further. And I'm very happy to see you all here again, because this gathering in itself, that is a sign of that we will be successful in this endeavor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for everything, and we come to an end here now, and you have had a lot of food for thought. Now it's time to have another kind of food. So I would like to say thank you for everybody being here, and on behalf of Maureen and everybody involved in the KIES, I think this is a great way of starting and getting the center, well, it's already off the ground, but move it even forward faster. And also with this, thank you for everybody that have been following on a live stream. And this will also be posted online in a few weeks. And so it's accessible to look at it and think about it and listen again and again and again to pick up all the different ideas that have been presented here, because it was very dense, but I think a lot of good food for thoughts. And hopefully the food we're going to get now is as good. So with that, thank you very much, and thank you for being here.